The night sky over Moscow was unusually still, the kind of silence that feels unnaturally heavy, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Streetlights hummed as they cast pale circles over empty boulevards, and the glass towers of the Moscow International Business Center glowed like metallic giants piercing the clouds. But beneath that surface calm, a storm was already coming, one that no radar detected, one that no alarm sounded in time. It began with a single echo in the far distance, a faint mechanical buzz cutting through the night. At first, it blended with the usual city noise, but the sound grew, multiplied, and transformed into a low swarm, like hum. In the dark sky, tiny silhouettes appeared, unmanned, relentless, and impossibly precise. Ukrainian drones, nearly 200 of them, moving silently across Russian airspace. For months, both nations had traded blows, accusations, and retaliatory strikes, each escalating with new technology, new strategies, and new levels of boldness. But tonight's strike, this one was different. It wasn't just an attack. It was a message, a warning, a show of capability that would change the entire tone of the war. Inside the Federation Tower, one of the tallest structures in all of Russia, night shift employees worked quietly, typing reports, monitoring systems, and preparing financial summaries. Most had no idea that in less than an hour, the building they were sitting in would be known across the world, not for its height, but for the flames that would consume it. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, in a secured operations room deep beneath Kyiv, Ukrainian officers watched the rendered map glowing on their screens. Each dot represented a drone. Each drone represented a calculated step toward one of the boldest missions executed since the war began. Commander Andriy Levin stood with arms crossed, eyes fixed on the live feed. He wasn't a man who spoke much, but when he did, others listened. Tonight, his silence filled the room like a presence of its own. The mission wasn't launched out of pride. No, it was launched out of necessity. Recent missile strikes had devastated several Ukrainian towns, destroying schools, homes, and leaving families shattered. This operation was designed to make Russia pay attention, to make them understand that every action had a consequence. Distance to Moscow, 80 kilometers. A young technician announced in a tense voice. Andriy nodded slightly, but his jaw clenched. He had personally overseen the development of these drones, lightweight, long, range almost undetectable, designed to slip through enemy defenses like ghosts in the night. Back in Moscow, news stations played their usual evening broadcasts, unaware of what was about to unfold. A taxi driver hummed a soft tune as he drove through the empty garden ring. A security guard in a skyscraper yawned as he poured himself tea. Couples sat in high-rise apartments scrolling through their phones. Children slept peacefully in warm beds, never imagining the sky above them was about to ignite. When the first drone entered the city's restricted air zone, air defense systems finally detected something. Red alerts flashed on military screens. Operators scrambled into action. For a brief moment, everything was chaos, alarms blaring, orders shouting, and hurried calculations that came far too late. Then came the first explosion. It wasn't enormous, but it was sharp, precise, striking the side of the billion-dollar IQ quarter tower. Glass shattered like a cascade of diamonds falling into the night. Fire burst outward, reflecting off the surrounding skyscrapers, painting the skyline with orange and red streaks. Cameras on the street below captured the moment, broadcasting it instantly across social media. Sirens erupted everywhere, and that was only the beginning. Drone after drone descended upon Moscow, not in a random barrage, but in a calculated formation. Several targeted radio systems, others aimed for energy infrastructure. Some were decoys, designed to confuse and overwhelm Russian defenses. Within minutes, Moscow's air defense network was firing wildly into the darkness, struggling to keep up. But the drones kept coming, Relentless, steady, guided with remarkable accuracy, panic spread through the city. Residents rushed to windows as emergency alerts buzzed on their phones. Some ran down staircases into basements. Others froze in fear, watching glowing trails of tracers slicing across the sky. Moscow had seen attacks before, but never anything like this. Not this scale, not this coordination, not this precision. At the Federation Tower, a massive fireball erupted from its midsection. The flames licked upward like hungry beasts devouring everything in their path. Plumes of smoke curled into the air, black and heavy, drifting across the skyline. The fire alarms inside the tower screeched, and sprinklers activated, sending cold water spraying through offices. People screamed, pushing past each other in panic as they rushed for stairwells. Most would escape. Some wouldn't. Every minute felt like an hour. Russian emergency helicopters scrambled into the sky, their rotors cutting the smoke. Filled air. Fire trucks raced toward the burning district, horns blaring as they cut through traffic. Police blocked roads, redirecting hundreds of vehicles. News anchors interrupted broadcasts, their voices shaking as they tried to interpret the chaotic footage streaming in from every direction. "This is unprecedented," one anchor said, barely holding her composure. Moscow is under one of the largest aerial attacks since the war began. Meanwhile, Ukrainian news channels broadcast a different tone, somber, determined, and filled with quiet anger. Footage of recent Ukrainian casualties played side by side with clips of the Moscow skyline burning. Tonight, the broadcaster said, Ukraine shows the world that it will not remain silent. As the attack unfolded, the drones seemed almost alive, moving with terrifying intelligence. They navigated around high-rise buildings, avoided anti-aircraft fire, and in some cases dove directly into windows or structural gaps. Deep inside the Russian Ministry of Defense, officers yelled into radios, demanding updates from every available unit. Satellite images flickered on screens. The Kremlin was notified immediately, and emergency security measures were put in place. The president was moved to a secure facility as advisors rushed to prepare responses. But anger couldn't stop the drones, not yet. Outside, the fire in the business district grew so large it illuminated clouds overhead. The glass facade of several towers melted from the heat. Explosions echoed through the canyons of steel and concrete. Firefighters fought desperately, water cannons spraying upward in graceful arcs, but the flames only intensified. In Kyiv, Commander Andriy watched silently as each drone reached its target. His heart was heavy, not with regret, but with a sadness that war always demanded a price. Civilians in Ukraine had seen their own towers destroyed, their own fires burn just as fiercely. This is what happens, he murmured softly to himself, when you push people to the edge. Back in Moscow, a young mother clutched her son in the basement of their apartment building. Dust fell from the ceiling as distant thunder, like booms, shook the ground. She whispered calming words, though her voice trembled. It's okay, stay with me. A firefighter, exhausted and coughing from smoke, climbed another flight of stairs inside the burning tower, searching for trapped civilians. His uniform was soaked, his lungs scorched, but he kept going. Because that's what people do in moments like this. They fight the darkness any way they can. A Ukrainian drone operator, just 24 years old, sat in his dark control room, hands tense on the manual override stick. He knew that across the border, Russian operators his own age were firing back. None of them were born wanting this war, but here they were, caught in a game far larger than themselves. The world watched in real time. News channels in Europe, America, Asia, all broadcasting the burning skyline of one of the most powerful cities on Earth. Commentators debated what the attack meant. Analysts spoke urgently about escalation. Social media exploded with videos, theories, anger, and fear. When the last drone finally crashed into its predetermined target, a deep silence fell over Moscow. Smoke billowed from multiple skyscrapers. Emergency lights flashed on every major road. Military vehicles patrolled the streets. People peeked from windows only after they were sure the sky had cleared. The damage was staggering. Billion-dollar towers charred and shattered. Several energy facilities offline. Communication systems disrupted. A part of the city that normally symbolized wealth, confidence, and strength now stood wounded, glowing faintly with dying flames. Commander Andriy finally exhaled. The operation was over, but he knew the repercussions were only beginning. Russia would respond, Ukraine would brace, the world would react. War was a chain reaction, one act igniting another, one fire leading to the next. But tonight's flames were impossible to ignore. As dawn crept over Moscow, turning smoke clouds pink and orange, the true scope of the attack became visible. Twisted metal hung from windows. Black scorch marks streaked across glittering facades. Streets were littered with debris. Firefighters, exhausted and soot-covered, finally sat down beside their engines, heads bowed. But the world had changed. This was the first time such a deep strike had been executed with such scale and such precision. And it proved something critical. Distance could no longer guarantee safety, wealth could no longer guarantee immunity, and cities once seen as untouchable were now vulnerable. In Kyiv, the sun rose too, warm and golden. People stepped outside their homes knowing that somewhere across the border their message had been delivered, not because they wanted destruction, but because destruction had already been brought upon them first. War turns ordinary skies into battlegrounds. Tonight, it turned Moscow's skyline into a burning warning glowing across the world.